wearing your TV10 news t-shirt or your shirt. And
I
can you tell me what that
one of
is?
one of about 85. No, I have a lot. Yeah, you have caught me in a sweet spot. I just completed a weekend back at ISU for the 50th anniversary of TV10, which is the program that I was the news director of for 20 years, but retired from last summer. And then next weekend is the Illinois News Broadcasters Association Spring Convention, which is an organization also very dear to me. I was president for a few years and I'm still very involved. So this is just a really fun time of year, right in the middle of two things that are really big pillars of my professional and kind of personal life, too.
Okay, so why is the INBA important? Because this is for the INBA as well. Why is the INBA
Mhm.
important?
Um, it's different things to different people. I would say that. I don't know that you and I have had the exact same experience, not at all, right? I was in it as a college student, and so I got to start meeting people and just to be in the room with real journalists and to listen to their conversations and to watch how they acted when the session was over, that was important. And maybe as a youngster, you don't even know that. I did win a scholarship that I got in the spring of my junior year, and I was literally facing a wall. I didn't have good parental support, and I did not know what my senior year was going to look like. And I had just found out that I could graduate in December, I could graduate early, but I didn't know how I was going to pay for that December. So what I got from the IMBA, which was probably $700 or something, and it wasn't a fortune, but gosh, it made a huge difference for me. And then I've just been with them all the time. Well, no, I went away. I lived in Milwaukee and I was out of the business, so I wasn't with them then. But I don't know if I added up the years, it would be a lot of years. And it is a place to find friends, and I think that's kind of the number one thing for me. But then we have sessions, and we have excellent sessions at our conventions. And when I say excellent, you know what? If I enjoy or got something out of 4 out of the 5, that's good, right? Because they're not perfect. But we're always just trying and trying in a pretty cheap and reasonable and accessible way to put out some programming, but then to add that networking and that friendship. So if you're new to the state, if you're a younger person, sometimes if you're an older person who is like, I still want to stay in touch, I still want to be with these friends. So, and you've been there, you'll see a huge range of people, and some who come once and never come again, which is unfortunate. And then some who kind of get the bug and are like, yeah, I'm doing this. I'm going to do this every fall and spring for a long time.
Yeah, and the conventions are incredible. I mean, I can't go this year because I teach on Friday and Saturday. I can't get away, but um I might go on Sunday actually, but I know that's the last day. But yeah, they're really incredible. And what I like about the conventions is you might be working in an outlet, a news outlet, and you might feel alone or you might feel disconnected. And then you go into INBA, you get new ideas, you meet new people, and then you feel like you have a community.
Exactly, exactly. And so we are probably better for the smaller, for the newer. I'm at WGN now, and I'd love to say I'm going to bring a busload of my colleagues. That is not going to happen. Chicago people, especially, have so many options and so many
Yeah.
things going on in life that it's hard to get their attention and pull them away. So I don't think we're as useful to the bigger places because they do have community. But you're right. If you're in a small place, if you're trying something new on your own, you're going to find several people that you can talk to and get ideas from and follow up with when you leave the convention, which is great.
Yeah, and also another thing about Chicago, because I was saying this for a while at the meetings and so forth, is that there are different professional organizations in Chicago, and it's according to your interests. So people don't really have to go outside. Although I always say that it's good to make contacts in smaller markets because sometimes you need information about an event, like in Springfield, or even if there's a fire
Mhm.
in Rockford or something, and you need somebody who has a local media connection, they can give you good contacts. So, but I don't think people think that way. So.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, my gosh, Rockford is a great example. Look at the news stories they've had in the
Yeah.
last month. And at the TV10 reunion I was just at, I got to spend some time with Coventry Adrian. She was one of my early students. She graduated in 2005. I hope I'm not supposed to say that. She is my first student to become a news director.
Wow.
So I'm very proud about that. She's the news director at WTVO in Rockford. That's an X Star station. WGN is an X Star station. So I had to give her a hard time because on a lot of these big stories, I just say, hey, I happen to know the news director. Like I'm not a big deal in our newsroom at all. But if I can offer something, I will. So I'm like, hey, I know who that is. I'll email her. So I do that. I'm getting no response. I'm like, Coventry, why are you not responding? And she explained, starting in January, one of her New Year's resolutions is to have a better work life balance.
Hmm.
I am sending my emails night side because that's when I work. She has gone home and she is trying not to look at her work email.
Okay.
So we're a little bit at cross purposes there, but I still think that connection, it's good that to know somebody in Rockford that you could reach out to. And I could, follow up with a phone call. I could get her if I really wanted to, because those connections are important. That's where news can happen anywhere.
That's true. And I know that WGN, so Next Star stations, you have that internal system where you can get information, you can get video and so forth from each other, but
Mhm.
it's not, sometimes it's closed off. So that's what I'm saying is that something's happening in Rockford, but you don't have access to their video, then you can call them up and say, "Hey, I was wondering, can you give me some information about that event or whatever
Right.
happened?"
Right.
Um,
What I've learned, Nexstar is a big station ownership group. I think 200, maybe 213 stations. But there are places Nexstar doesn't have a station, like Detroit. There's no
mm,
Nexstar station in Detroit. And WGN is not part of a network. Big thing happens in Detroit, we're kind of screwed.
mhm.
That's just interesting to me.
Yeah. And also I noticed also that Nexstar doesn't have stations in there's some other areas that you'd expect them to have stations in and they don't. So that's when you have to
Hmm.
sort of think creatively, especially as a writer.
Right.
But okay, let's go back to TV10 for a second.
Okay.
So this reunion, did you go to Illinois State or where did you go to college?
I did. I got a bachelor's degree from Illinois State, and I was in the TV10 program at that time. And then I went back several years later, and because my husband and I moved back to Bloomington after a few years out in the business, um, I started grad school kind of just because it was there. And then that turned into part-time teaching, and that turned into being the director of TV10. So yeah, I have 2 degrees from ISU, and I have my ISU stuff on the wall there.
Nice. Yeah, ICU seems really great for communication. I tell people to consider it now that I've seen
Yeah,
it myself.
it's big enough, but also small enough where literally you're going to know all your professors and all your classmates by name by the second week. And yeah, and you're going to work together and you're going to become a family too. And I saw a lot of that at the reunion, a lot of those groups getting back together, and that's amazing. I love to see that.
That's true because I've met people who went to ISU and they major in communications like radio or TV, and they made friends there, and it was like a special group or a special club or something, not exclusive, but they
Right.
feel connected. Yeah, and help them in their career later. But yeah, they're very loyal, it seems.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, I think we feel like we're in the shadow of the U of I a bit, but we think we're just as good. And so that kind of draws us together. And it's not an elite school. It's not the most expensive. It doesn't have the highest admission rates, but it is really good. It is a well-respected school. I'm really proud of it.
But you know how it is because okay, you say in the shadow, but you guys are not even in Champaign. You're in Normal.
No,
So
but when somebody's looking to where they're gonna go, Illinois is the flagship and people are gonna look at that first, but it's not right for everybody, that's for sure.
yeah, and also what I notice is because I teach at Columbia and I tell the students this is it's your portfolio because you can go to the
Mhm.
fanciest school on the planet, but if you don't have any work for your portfolio, that's not going to really help you.
You are so right. Yep, you are so right. When I was producing, um, we always knew that you could, so you have that one day that everything goes really well and you feel like, oh, this is the best show ever. So you put that on your reel or your website or whatever it is. But then you would also, if you were going for a job, you knew that that news director might be like, send me yesterday's show or send me today's show. No, usually it would be yesterday's because they wanted to see what was done. And
Mhm.
you're only as good as your last show. I would tell producers that. You know, it's great to have those ones that you're really proud of, and maybe you will win an award that way. But when you're looking for a job, you got to be doing something every day.
That's true. So what was it like? Because you're from Illinois also, right?
I am. Yeah, I was
So
born here.
so what's it like to have a lot of your career and also be from Illinois? I mean, now you're really in Illinois because some people just move from somewhere else.
Right. I guess I don't know much different. I did live and work in Milwaukee for about 7 years, but that's all I know. So, but Chicago, and you and I have talked. I never lived in Chicago before. My grandparents were in Maywood and then Elmhurst. I had an aunt and uncle in Wheaton. So I was pretty regularly up to the suburbs 3 or 4 times a year. I had seen the Bozo show. Thank goodness. I don't think they let you in the door at WGN if you can't say something about Bozo. And I knew about Cuddly Dudley, the dog. I remembered that from my childhood. And I think I said that during my interview. So thank goodness. But so I guess I'm seeing both sides of Illinois finally because I was born in the town of Rushville, 3,300 people.
Hmm.
And I was literally born in that hospital and I was there till I was 18. So I know the small town life, not farm life, but small town life. And I know the medium size of I've lived in Peoria and I've lived in Bloomington. And now here I am. And I do live in the city like you do, but in a different part.
Right.
But I don't know anything else outside of Illinois other than, travel that I've done in my life.
Oh, and I was gonna say, I thought no, I was gonna say also that, what is small town life like? I have no idea.
Um, yeah, I think it was a good place to grow up in the 70s, as I did. Um, I mean, there are still people, especially through Facebook, maybe some women, who were my mom's friends or, or who used to babysit me growing up, who I still just, I'm so fond of and will talk to on Facebook sometimes when they're on Facebook. Um, Very nurturing. Um, it was a good school system. Again, some small towns really struggle because they don't have any employment and they don't care about having any culture. My small town had like a really good little theater troupe that did summer theater that all the kids could go and try out and be in the summer theater productions. But then they did other things through the year. We had a little movie theater. Our sports were fine. We went to state every once in a while in a sport. So there was some of that. There was a good farming environment, which I think is important to know about, especially in Illinois. Farming is a huge industry in this state. So I've always had a good respect for agriculture and farmers. But we had attorneys and my dad was a pastor. So that was an interesting upbringing. My mom was a teacher. Um, we had a doctor who was basically world famous, Dr. Russell Donor. He delivered me. He took out my tonsils. He was known because he did house calls his entire medical career. And he didn't retire until he was in his 80s. And when you went to his office, it was $2 a visit. And he never wanted to change. He wanted to be a small town doctor. Um, so it was a cute, smart, decent little small town where I got to do a little bit of everything, and I actually got started in radio through somebody through the INBA, Bill Wheelhouse. He was 3 years ahead of me in the schools. He was working at a local radio station, and when it was time for him to move on to college and move up the next level of radio station, he was like, well, I hear there's this young girl and she might be good at this. Why don't you give her a shot? So I got to start to work at a small radio station even when I was in high school. And you wouldn't do that in Chicago. That's the thing. When you can grab some of these experiences, I announced for the basketball team when I was in high school. You wouldn't do that in Chicago, but that helped me at some point along the way. I was in the pep band. That's a fun thing. I don't know. I liked small town life, but I haven't been back. Like, I never go back. I went back when my mom still lived there, but I don't go back anymore. And it's kind of, even when I was back in Bloomington this weekend, I couldn't believe, like, in the first 5 minutes, I saw 4 people I knew. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, here
Wow.
I am in a small town. Yeah. So Bloomington felt small. Now that I'm a city girl.
That's because Chicago, you could be anonymous. Like you live your life, you're on your path, and you might see
Mhm.
people again and again, but people don't really have time for drama. Yes, there's drama, but you can either get into it or not, and you're fine without it. And it seems like the
Exactly. I
perception
do
is,
like that because you can do that. You can. You're so right. You can just be anonymous. But then again, I live in a neighborhood up north. I walked out the door the other day to go on a walk. I don't even know where I was going. Oh, I was meeting somebody because I was late because I ran into 2 neighbors on their walks and
really.
had to stop and pet their dog. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get there. I was going to the Cubs game last Friday. But also, how cool is that? I walked to the Cubs game last Friday.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, because I see the traffic, people from the suburbs and so forth driving up to the Cubs game.
Mm-mm. No, I didn't want that. I picked a neighborhood and I kind of picked WGN. I mean, I'm so glad they picked me too. But knowing where it just physically is, that's what I wanted.
Yeah,
So
that's
maybe I'm
real.
small town in Chicago somehow.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people say that, Chicago's not typical big city anyway because people are pretty friendly. I mean, of course we're a big city, we have issues, but okay, so back to the small town thing though, is why the perception that people have of small towns, of more rural areas, is a lack of culture, a lack of
Mhm.
education. Okay, it's a stereotype. So,
Well,
what do you think about that?
I will say there were neighboring towns where that was true. And I don't really know, you just need those maybe 2 or 3 people who feel a certain way. And maybe we had a few more transplants because my parents were transplants. My mom grew up in Maywood. And so I don't know if you know the history of Maywood. She went to Proviso High School when it was just Proviso before it even split. So she came from a very diverse, very city-ish upbringing. My dad came from Peoria, where I'm very proud that my grandparents were civil rights pioneers. They were part of a lot of the things that were changing in Peoria at that time. And there were no people of color in my small town. That I think would be the thing that I would hold against it. But I mean, it wasn't their fault. I don't know. I don't know. And I feel real lucky that I would then come up and go to church in Maywood with my grandparents, or I would do something with my other grandparents in Peoria that would at least widen my horizons a little bit. But my small town, it just was one of the good ones because we did have the culture and we did have just a little bit more than the next town, 10 miles away did. And I have seen that. Made a big difference.
But of
So
course, I mean,
pick
the
your
less
small towns carefully.
right. And also, we live in a big country with lots of different kinds of people. So people can't generalize about cities or small towns. It's not like small towns are one way, cities are another way. So you're just
True.
confirming the variation in our state as well.
Yeah, I think I am. Now, is that small town the same today? I couldn't be sure. And I do, from what I see and hear, I do have friends who still have parents there and are back there fairly frequently. There is a stronger conservative political feeling there than there was. But I think that's true of our whole country. I don't think we were as split back in the
Yeah.
60s, 70s.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
60s,
also
I guess.
maybe, well, a lot of people say that, I'm echoing, but a lot of people say that there's this incredible split, but I think it's also because we're aware of splits. Because before, when you were younger, did you know what people in, for instance, Missouri thought?
Good
Because
point.
there was no social media.
Exactly. No, good point. Yeah, and I remember Nixon, and I remember the day that I saw on the newspaper, as we were walking out of a grocery store about Nixon resigns. That's probably my first, like, political memory. So no, you're right. Illinois politics has always been interesting to follow, and we've had both Democrats and Republicans in the state house over my lifetime, certainly. But you're right. Yeah, I didn't know how they were voting or what their politicians were saying. Um, Maybe California, because they get attention, maybe New York. But yeah, so much of the middle of the state would just get muddled. Middle of the country, sorry.
Yeah, because I mean, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because sometimes I think that people make, I'm not saying that everybody's correct or not correct, but I'm just saying that our perception of public discussion is different now because of the fractured media. I mean, not fractured, but diversified media outlets that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we think about how people think and if it's polarized and so forth, it could have been polarized over 50 years ago. We just weren't aware of it.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah.
But okay, so now I just want to say I'm very impressed with WGN TV
Ooh.
because they hired somebody with a lot of experience who's not 24 years old because I've seen that in radio where
Oh,
not on the WGN side, not on WGN, but I've seen other stations where they'll hire people with barely any experience over people with more
the
experience.
money. Yeah.
Well, it's not just money. No, I've seen people paid very well who have like barely any experience. It's because of
Oh,
some person.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's because of this perception that younger people are more aware of certain things, but they don't respect experience. That's what I've seen. But
Hmm.
how did you get that job? I mean, you have one of the top jobs in America.
Well, I am at a top station. I am a writer.
Okay.
And so every day I literally have a to-do list and I just get through my to-do list. And then when my shift is up, I go home. Um, it's important. I mean, I will write a story probably today about a hippopotamus at the Cincinnati Zoo had a baby. I mean, I get that kind of stuff all the time because I usually do the 4 o'clock kickers. And so what, right? But I want to make sure that I get the name right and that I get the breed of the hippopotamus right and how many other ones of that, you still care about, because then my next story will be here, get a soundbite from Mayor Brandon Johnson at this event where he's talking about police issues and then there's a 14-year-old shot outside of high school, and so some days it's like a fire hose and some days it's almost boring. It's weird. But how I got the job, I was going through some things last summer personally and decided that I was going to see if I could move and retire and start something new, really on a whim. I applied on a Sunday afternoon online. They called on Monday. They interviewed me on Tuesday and they offered me the job on Wednesday.
Wow.
Okay, I have 25 years of experience in education. And it was good. It was successful. We won awards. People got jobs. I had people working in that newsroom who I taught, who I have learned. They ran to them right away. They're like, "What about her? What about her? Should we?" I actually heard from several people this weekend who were like, "Yeah, I got called when you were applying at WGN.
Wow.
I didn't know." They actually did some good work, and I'm actually proud to hear that. But I also had been in Milwaukee, which at that point was a top 30 market for 7 years. So I had that experience. I had been in Peoria for 3 years before that. So, and again, the job, I'm not in charge of anything. Producers look at everything I do, EPs look at everything they do. The anchors certainly have a hand in everything that goes on. The technical stuff gets looked at by excellent directors, so I wasn't hard to take a chance on, I guess, I don't know, but most people don't get hired in 4 days. I do know that. So it
But that
was a
says
very lucky thing.
No, that it's not lucky. That says a lot about the
Mhm.
company that hired you. I'm serious because when I saw that you were hired, I thought, wow, I have a lot of respect for them because they valued your experience. And I think now sometimes it's really hard to see such standards and, it's like to me it's like ethical because they're
Mhm.
not just looking, they're not just seeing like, oh, is she hot? Does she have Botox? Does she wear a
Margaret.
low cut shirt? No, but you know what I mean? No, I've seen this. I'm
I
telling you
do.
because I
I
worked in
do.
radio for 17 years. So I saw various things.
Yeah.
And it says I just have a lot of respect for them doing that. But okay, back to, Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee and actually Peoria is a great town. I could easily live there in Peoria or Milwaukee. But what did you do in those
I'd
markets?
pick Milwaukee. Love
Okay,
Milwaukee.
I
Yeah.
love
Great city.
Milwaukee. What did you do there?
I was a producer at WISN-TV, the ABC affiliate. When I was hired there, I was overnights and produced the morning show. It was an hour-long morning show at that time, and that was a big deal. My gosh, WGN does 6 hours in the morning. So I did that for like a year and a half. A little thing called Dahmer happened during that time, and I handled that well. So that certainly didn't hurt me. And so I did get promoted once there was an opening. And I worked, I think I did the 6 o'clock show next, the 6 p.m. Did that for 2.5 years, and then did the 5 p.m. show for another year and a half, 2 years. I had a baby girl while we were up there. And at some point, I was like, this baby girl, if I'm producing the 6 or 5 o'clock show, I won't get home to her till 7 at nights. And, what about after school? And what about the soccer practice and the brownie meetings and the play that she wants to be in and all these things, that I got to do as a kid. So, that made me change. But anyway, I love Milwaukee. WISN is an excellent, strong station. I still have friends who are there. I'm now hanging out with some of the friends who now live and work in Chicago, and it's been great to catch up with them again. But strong station, Hearst owned. Hearst is an excellent broadcast owner, has continued to be very strong. They don't own a ton of stations, but they're known to be very good, very ethical, but also very innovative. So I love WISN.
And then what about Milwaukee compared to Chicago? I know Milwaukee's smaller, but what's the experience?
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's great. I feel like there are similar feelings to them. The downtown being on lake, the variety of things. The towns both love sports, but they also have great music scenes, great concert, great cultural things, good museums. Um, Maybe the German heritage, the Polish heritage, those are strong. They are both very racially divided cities in a lot of ways, geographically. Crime is a problem in both cities, certainly, although I'm not sure where it isn't. Um, yeah, I at this point I'm just like, oh, how have I lived this close to Milwaukee for 10 months already and I haven't been there? So I'm definitely looking at what can I do this summer to get back up there. But Milwaukee was just such a doable city, so accessible. The traffic's not the same. The travel and headaches are not the same. The parking's not as bad. The downtown sometimes kind of feels boring at night, like things kind of close down a little bit, and that's not the case in Chicago anymore. So
Oh, that's true. Yeah. And then you worked in Peoria. What'd you do there?
I was a producer. Well, that was my first job out of college. I was actually a reporter in Peoria on the weekends while I was still in college. I got hired in college, and it actually does happen in those size markets still. I can't say that doesn't happen anymore. So I worked weekends for 6 or 7 months, and then my junior, start of my senior year, and then I was hired as a full-time producer when I graduated and did that for 3 years. And
And then what?
great training grounds. Sorry.
No, no, no. Why was it great training grounds?
Because it's a small city and it had enough of a diversity of things going on. So, you covered crime, but you didn't just cover crime. And then you would go do something at the Lakeview Museum because they would have a great exhibit about science and space. And then there's a thriving hospital community there, medical community, with all kinds of innovations going on all the time and good stories to cover there. And then, things would catch on fire occasionally because you need to cover some fires. There would be a traffic backup every little while. But so just a really nice variety. Agriculture there, a lot of different things. Caterpillar, good to cover some business, and some courts. The thing about teaching, I could never figure out how to make that perfect experience where everybody learned about everything. Because, again, how do you teach how to cover a fire? You talk about it, you show examples, you say, do this, not this. But until you're out there, standing there, being like, oh my gosh, I smell like smoke, and I'm going to get wet if I stand over there, and who can I talk to? And somebody's crying, and should I walk up to them or not? Until you do that, you don't know. So I just, you need an area that's got a little bit of everything so you can experience it.
So what was it like working in front of the camera versus behind the camera?
Mm, I mean, I kind of, again, the high school stuff that I did, doing some PA work, and then I was in, did you do speech competition in high school? Like
We had
speech
it,
teams?
yeah.
Yeah. So I did that, and I think I did, what did they call it? Dramatic duet acting. My best friend Catherine and I don't know, our teacher thought we could do it, we could memorize stuff, I guess. And we weren't actresses, but so I was always at least dabbling in those kind of things. And I was never really afraid to talk to people. Thank goodness, because that's a thing for so many people. So yeah, I just did it. I mean, obviously, like, not hot. I can comb my hair and put on a little makeup and be okay. But there's a lot of places I wouldn't have been hired. I never wanted to pursue that exclusively, but I was happy to do it. I was on the air in Milwaukee too. Did you know that?
No, so what did you do there when
So
you were on
because
air?
when I was working the overnights, the news director had this idea that we would become the 24-hour news service. So that was a total branding thing. And maybe other Hearst stations were doing it. I'm not sure. Sorry. But that would mean that every hour on the hour, there would be, if not a full newscast, at least a 30-second news break. So that was kind of the gimmick. Well, 1 o'clock in the morning, who's going to do that news break? And I always joke, I was like, well, it was me or either of the two nice janitor people who worked. And they chose me. They're like, oh,
Wow.
did you do this in college? You could do this, right? So I went to the J.C. Penney outlet and I bought like 15 new dresses so that I would have fancy dresses because, you were going to see this much of me for 30 seconds at a time. So I had to look good. And so I did that for the next, whatever, year and a half that I was doing that show. So I was on the air 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m. And then the morning anchor came in and he would take it over from there. So I was on the air, and that is how I became the first person to ever broadcast anything about the Jeffrey Dahmer discovery, just because of that dumb luck of being on the air at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I got the call, and the discovery started to happen at midnight that night. So that was me.
Wow.
Weird,
Wow,
right?
yeah. I mean, that's how it is with news though, is it's always happening and you never know who's going to be in a certain spot.
Exactly. You have to be ready. And that, again, I heard somebody say one time, football players know when their Super Bowl is, right? They
Mhm.
plan for it, they train for it, they prepare for it, they always have that goal. In news, your Super Bowl could be 5 minutes from now and you don't
That's
even know it. And you have to jump into action. So
that's
I
true.
think I had my Super Bowl already, probably.
Well, I think that's why people really like working in the media. There's nothing like it because it's the deadlines, it's anything can happen anytime.
Mhm.
You're always on the edge. It's an excitement. It's a crazy ride.
Exactly. Yeah. Adrenaline junkies. Do you like roller coasters too?
Yes, love them.
I
Yeah.
do too. Yeah. Yeah.
But I was gonna say also that when you're now that you're a writer, is it weird just like sitting at a desk and writing?
I don't like the sitting at a desk. Um, and I can't do anything about that. I mean, I get up and a lot of us do this. We just get up and walk around the building, and
Yeah.
I'm union, so I get a paid dinner hour, and I usually use more than half of that. We have a pretty nice neighborhood around us, and I just walk up and down the streets. Um, it's weird, but it's a real good weird. I'm really happy. Like Ben Bradley knows how to pronounce Pete Buttigieg's name.
Right.
So I didn't, and I joked about
Okay,
that
wait,
at
look,
the
can you just
beginning.
tell people who Ben Bradley is?
He's one of our anchors, and he does WGN Investigates. Yeah, he anchors our 4 o'clock. And he's very award winning. I think he was at ABC 7 before he came to us. So yeah, I joked one of my first days. I'm like, oh, do you think I have to go help Ben learn how to say Buttigieg? Because every anchor I ever worked with for the last 20 years, I would have to go and help them, which is fine. That was my job. I loved it. I loved it. But it's cool. And for a while, I was like, you might be writing too simple, Laura. This is Micah Mater. This is Ray Cortopassi. These are good, experienced anchors. They could handle a little more density in your scripts, probably. And nobody came and said that to me, but I've just kind of seen things evolve for myself over time. But also, I'm just not in charge of anything except my own to do list. And that's really refreshing. It really is. I'm not missing that work in that way. I'm not sorry for a day or a year of it, but I'm not missing it either. I have a life now.
Yeah, that's nice to be in that position where you can acknowledge that, what's important to you and act upon it.
Mhm. Mhm. And to
But
have different times in your life when you do different things and prioritize differently. And I feel very lucky to be doing that because I know a lot of people don't get to make those kind of choices. I know that.
yeah, but I mean, all of us, if you're old enough, a lot of us have done things throughout our careers where we weren't really thrilled about what we were doing. And I think some
Right.
people, they don't realize that it's almost like a privilege. You can't just graduate from school and get everything you want. You have to sort of pay your dues.
No. Yeah, I would preach about that a bit. Sometimes I would give a speech at our graduation luncheon at the end of the year, and I would just look them in the eye and say, "Prepare to not be happy because it's gonna happen,
Well, you
but
have to be
also
disciplined. Yeah.
have it in mind that you're going to get there again because it will be in your future, and then find the little ways to be happy." Whether it is that you get a dog and you love your dog. Maybe your job isn't great, maybe your partner isn't great or whatever, but you love this little things, little things. I don't know.
Well, there's also a discipline to it because when you're not doing things that you're thrilled about, you still have to do the work and do what has to get done. And
You
then,
do.
yeah.
You and I know this and believe this. I'm not sure everybody believes that because a lot of people are looking for a shorter path than a loophole.
Well, and the loophole now, luckily, and I tell the students this too, is we're in the 21st century. You can create your content. So let's say that you're working in something you're not thrilled about. You can create a YouTube channel or TikTok or whatever the heck you want and create your content. And then one day it can intersect with an opportunity.
Absolutely. You are so right about that. Yep. I have kind of come to kind of preach that to people too, that why aren't you covering something right now? Somebody I talked to this weekend, they were maybe going to go a different direction, but wanted to be ready if they wanted to get back in the media. And I'm like, well, then keep covering stories. Like, buy yourself an inexpensive camera and maybe do
Exactly.
pledge to do 5 stories over the year and put those in a little portfolio. And you're going to keep your skills at least happening and have something that's newer than 3 years ago. And yeah, there's no excuse not to be. If you want to do journalism, you want to tell people stories, blog about it, video about it, TikTok about it, whatever. But do it. Do it. It's right there. It's right there. It's crazy.
Yeah, because a long time ago, I mean, I didn't get into the media until digital came around anyway, but I know I hear from older people that you studied something, you got into the business, and if you weren't able to get into the business, that was it. You couldn't express your content anywhere. But
Yep.
I
Yep.
was gonna say, but yeah, is that what you saw?
Oh yeah. No, and I was thinking from this reunion. So I have a dear, dear friend. We were in college together, and she's smart, she's motivated, she's wonderful, and she didn't get a job out of school. Her voice is a little bit higher, but not awful at all. And her look was a little bit not beauty queen, and she just didn't get hired. I'm sure she could have gotten a producer job, but she really wanted to be on the air, put herself together beautifully. Again, always had great ideas, connections, had everything. And when I look back at that now, I'm like, oh my God, you would be hired 10, you'd have 10 offers in an hour today because the jobs are out there and they're so ready. And really, stations are having to take big chances on people right now. They really, really are. And if you don't get hired in this business right now, you just must not be trying because they're really, the smaller stations, especially. Now, are you going to like the hours? Are you going to like the money? Are you going to like the company? Maybe not. But the jobs are there and people are taking chances on almost anybody right now is what I see.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but the problem is that they're not paying well. So why would somebody make minimum wage, okay? No union. See, you're in a union. So
Right.
they're not going to pay you bad money. And these other places are not union, and so it gives them the freedom to pay really badly. So why, and also people have to pay back their loans and they have to pay rent. So what is the incentive of getting into the business?
Okay, so the student loan thing is another thing. Remind me, I can get back to that. Okay, the pay is not awesome, but the pay has improved hugely over the last, it was starting to turn right before COVID. So I was literally telling students right before COVID, low 20s. They were still getting offered 22, 23,000 a year. And I'm talking about the starter markets around ISU. So Peoria, Rockford, Champaign, Scotiaire, Springfield, Decatur, Quincy, Quad Cities. And again, ISU, great place because you can get to all those places. But now they're all at 30. And
Okay.
that's a big percentage in a short time. Now, should they have been at 30 back then and be at 40 now? Yes, 100%. But they are better. Gray pays $18 an hour now, and that has put pressure. I talked to some Next Star news directors this weekend who were like, we pay 15. We're screwed. And so these things are happening where the news directors are saying, hey, look what they're doing over there. Hey, general manager, you got to help me out. When I was visiting stations over the last 2 years, I met more general managers on my most recent visits than I had through all of my time. And I started to realize what these news directors were doing was saying, I need more ammunition because I know I have to pay more, but nobody's listening to me. So you come in and be professor lady and be the lady with the line to the students and, back me up that we have to pay more. So the money is better. But then, oh my gosh. Okay. So one thing that happens is if you have a roommate in college, right? So maybe they're an accounting major. So they're getting offered 60, 70, 80 right out of school. So you're 30 or even you're 35 seems terrible, right? But then I'm here saying, but that's almost 10,000 more than it was 5 years ago. That's so great. Yeah.
Well, it's
But it
also a
is
different
better.
industry. Oh, no, but also more people need accountants than they need journalists.
True, true. And, people's finances are pretty important. But then you've got the student loan thing. And I've had these conversations with a lot of people, student loans have hurt journalism. I'm sure they've hurt other industries too. But one of my alums, I just saw him posting this weekend, and he went to grad school too. Now, he didn't go straight into journalism, but he does video production and he has his whole life. So he's still in the business. I think he has, I think it's still over $30,000 that he owes. And it's going to be 40 this year. And it's just like, oh my God. And I don't think he's been stupid with money. I mean, he's lived a pretty normal life, got married, bought a house, has a little girl, and it's just like, but you can't when you've got a $600 monthly student loan payment, which is what I've heard of. I mean, I couldn't pay that right now because I pay Chicago rent, but no, when you're making $30,000 now, again, sometimes what a young person out of college will think they need to live on,
Right.
maybe we could do some adjusting with that, and maybe you don't need the deluxe phone plan and every streaming service
Right.
and a new car. And so there are things that coming from my day, I'm just like, well, pull back a little bit. But you need to pay rent, you need to pay your car insurance, um, and you're supposed to look good and feel good about yourself on TV. That's a really hard thing. If you're feeling like crap and being treated like crap, and yet you've got to go and be an authoritative, professional, good-looking, well-prepared person, that doesn't compute at all. So yeah, the student loans are nuts.
Well, the
I'm
solution, okay, the solution is if these stations want to get good people, then pay off their student loans or pay 50% of their student loans. So it's like a
Oh, that
signing
would be
bonus.
amazing. That
Okay,
would
do
be
it.
amazing.
So pay them, $18, like I know Gray is one of the better companies. Pay them
Yeah.
that thing, but also say to them, if it's sort of like the Peace Corps, like there's certain programs. Like so for instance, there's certain loans, like I met this guy a long time ago and he was in med school and they said he had an agreement. There was some program where he would have to serve in a more underserved community. So I think he went to Guam or something like that. And he
Yeah.
served there for a certain amount of time. And then his student loans were either relieved or they were paid for or something like that or lessened or something. So that's what the station should do now is say, okay, you got X amount of student loans, we'll pay this percentage. And I think they'd get a lot better people in there.
I vote for that. I love that. I love
Otherwise,
that.
they're going to unionize. Okay, I know a lot of people hate
Yeah.
unions, but this is why people unionize because you're in a union job. And if they violate something in your contract, or if they call you into the office or something, you have union representation to work for you. And a
Yeah.
lot of these people are out there, left to their own devices.
Right. And they just don't know. I was brought contracts over the years to look at, and I was not a knowledgeable negotiator. I mean, I've had 4 jobs in my life, and I really haven't been on very few other job interviews. I usually got the first or second thing I tried for, I guess. So I'm not good at that stuff. And then I would always joke, I'm like, literally, I've never hired anybody. And for 20 years, I helped people with their resumes and through the hiring process. And I don't think that I wasn't helpful, but I'd say, but remember, I've never hired anybody. So,
Well, the thing is, okay, well, it sounds like because I've rarely met somebody who only had 4 jobs in their lifetime. But some people only have one job. They lucked out. But, when you were teaching for 20 years, well, first of all, why did you get into teaching full time instead of staying in the media, working in the media?
when my husband and I decided to move from Milwaukee because of having the baby, we moved to Bloomington where he was able. So I was kind of the maid. I was the main breadwinner in Milwaukee. So we were both in Peoria, moved to Milwaukee, and so I took the big job, and he just had different part-time things. Eventually full time, but I was the main one. So then we flipped it, and he got the main job, and then I would come along and start to do the part-time things. Well, I didn't want to be in the media in Bloomington because I don't know how much you know about Bloomington, but the TV stations aren't there. We're served by the Peoria market. So that was a 45-minute drive every day. I've always been against commuting. And maybe that's the small town girl in me. It just seems like such a waste of very precious time. So I've just always been acutely aware of that and tried to live 20 minutes or less from where I work. I don't know. I'm just that way. So didn't want to work in Peoria. I could have worked probably at WJBC radio there in Bloomington. And I just didn't want to. I was maybe a little burned out, but the teaching seemed like, oh, well, that could be a part-time thing. I would have some autonomy over that. And then they started to pay. They got me like tuition waivers for my grad school. So I was teaching a little and going to grad school for free. And again, so that way I didn't really have to be working and it was working on his salary. I don't know. And then the TV10 job opened because it was held by it was a married couple that was running it. They kind of both did the job. They left the year that my second child was going to start all day kindergarten, which our district had never offered, but this was their first year of all day kindergarten. So that would mean I wouldn't have to find, half a day of daycare for him or anything. So I have had a very lucky life. I will say that I have been in the right place at the right time over and over again. I'll probably get hit by a bus today, Margaret.
No. Well, no, it's also
No,
because
no.
no, it's also because you have a very likable personality because I mean, we're in Illinois, okay? We're not in New Jersey or New York where like you really have to have more of an edge. But I mean, here in
Oh
Illinois,
God,
I
yeah.
think
No, I wouldn't work there. No. Mm-mm.
yes,
No.
yeah, I like it out there. I mean, I think I belong more out there, but the thing is, I think in Illinois what works is if you have a very pleasant, agreeable personality. And I know that in the media it helps when you can get along with people.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think I do get along with people. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of moved into that TV10 job, and I actually remember because of the situation with the kids and what I had thought about in Milwaukee about I want to be home when they get home from school, all that after school stuff. One of my pitches to the people who were going to hire me for TV10 was we need to move the newscast and put it in the middle of the day. It needs to be a noon newscast. And they were like, oh, really? Why? And I did not say, because I have two small children and I need to get home. I said, well, most of our students will get their first jobs either doing a noon show or a morning show or a weekend show. They won't start on those later newscasts, which is true. And also, we only own 3 cameras. Instead of just using 3 cameras to cover 3 stories in the afternoon, we could use 3 cameras in the morning on 3 stories. We could go get 3 more stories in the afternoon. And we'll work at night too, and we'll get 3 more. We'll get 9 stories out of our 3 cameras every day. More opportunity. So it worked. It worked.
And
I
sorry,
never wanted to sell.
what time was the original show?
6 p.m. And
Oh,
when
okay.
I was a student, that's what we did. Yeah, sorry about this cough. It's just hanging
No, it's
on.
okay. Okay, but moving it to the midday, it gave you more opportunities to gather stories.
It did. Yep, it did. It was the right move. I mean, that's still when it is, and it's just more like, then people can stop by and see it, like your bosses or other professors or stuff. So, but then again, they're looking for a new person right now. They may name a new director very soon. Maybe that person will decide it's time to make it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock. And that I wouldn't argue with that at all, believe in something and make a plan and go for it and make it work.
Okay, so you began at ISU, you said part-time, and then you moved into full-time. And
Mhm.
so what was it like? I mean, obviously you affected a lot of students. What was it like to teach all these students and see them grow, etc.?
Um, I'm just great. I mean, I am a mom, and they're my best thing ever, I guess. But then and I didn't think of the students as kids until probably maybe the last 5 years, because now my kids are older than the students. And at some point, I was just like, all right, I know I'm because people will call me their TV mom. I'm like, I know, I know, I know.
That's cute.
But there's just so much pride, just, and they grow so much, like every semester. They grow exponentially. You and I probably don't change a whole bunch over a couple or 3 years, where our skill level's the same, whatever. They just grow. Oh my gosh. And it's like, think about what you were doing 16 weeks ago. Did you see what you did? You did this incredible live shot with no preparation, and you did it all off the top of your head, and it was so good. And or look at this beautiful piece that you edited, and we're going to nominate you for an Emmy now.
That's
Just
cool.
to be able to do those things and see them, and then to continue to see their lives is it's just great. It's just great. I mean, I would give it to everybody if I could. Always wish I could have made a little more money. And maybe now I'm looking back like, oh my God, you never stopped doing that job.
Mhm.
And I just don't know how you could. Not only is it teaching, where you're always planning the next class and then grading from the class before, this,
Mhm.
but it's also a newsroom. So you're always like, oh, did you hear? Did you see on Facebook something's on fire? Do we have somebody covering that? Do they have questions about how to cover that? Did the car stop working when they were at the fire? Do you have to call the police So those two things made it a very constant thing. It's been nice to undo my brain a little bit from all of that.
So you were saying that, okay, so you were a professor teaching the students, you had a grade, and then on top of that, you were a news director.
Yes.
Oh yeah, so you had like
And I
two
was in charge of
jobs.
like the budget and the planning.
Mhm.
And we would do these events like this reunion that I went to this weekend. I didn't have to do anything, and I have so much respect and gratitude for the people who planned it because it was beautiful. It was wonderful. Like, I didn't hear a complaint out of anybody. The food was excellent. The registration was seamless. Everybody's name tags were right. I've never been to an event where nobody was like, "Well, they messed up my name on my name tag," No, it was great. But I did 4 of those where you have a ballroom and you have 150 people for dinner, plus you plan things in the daytime and you try to make sure the students are involved. And we would hold conventions, and then we have all the parents come at graduation. That's a big luncheon day. We have a big broadcast banquet at the end of the year, like a formal. I would have a holiday party at my house, so all of those things in addition. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I helped make it a lot. And the people I worked with, we all agreed to make it a lot. But now I'm like, that was a lot. Wow.
So basically, you were on call all the time. It was your entire lifestyle.
I was. And again, nobody forced that on me. My boss, Steve Hunt, was my executive director for the majority of my time there. Complete support, complete cheerleader, complete autonomy. But I made it hard. That's what I see now. I'm like, Laura, why did you do that? But I'm not sorry.
Well, yeah, but it sounds like, I mean, you said your dad's a pastor. It sounds like you had like your own, not mission, but something like that. It was like your calling and your avocation, and it was your
Probably.
contribution to society.
Yeah, both of my parents looked at their lives that way. Because then when my dad eventually left the ministry, he went into healthcare administration, and he still had, and he ran an ambulance service for a few years, and it was a small town, small county that had never had that service before, and was really important. And my mom was a teacher, and she felt a mission there. So yeah, it kind of feels like a high-minded word, but I just I think it was the right way to do it, but it wasn't easy now that I'm looking back on it. And I have so much respect for the people who are doing it. And I hope they get a new person in to add to that. And if they want to streamline it a little bit here and there and make it a little easier on themselves, I will support them in that too.
Yeah, so what's it like now? You said that you don't really have your responsibilities to get your things done, and you're in a union job, so there are boundaries in that. So what's that like? How did you adjust to that?
Just I have to dial it down a bit. And I early on, especially, I had a couple days where I was like, "Oh no, they don't I don't need to say, I don't need to do that. Okay. All right. Just calm down. Just write your hippo stories. Just
Yeah.
write your crisis in the Middle East story of the day. And yeah, so it's just again, I'm doing stuff with my brain. But then I have time to walk for an hour and a half most days if I want to, which is good because I don't know if you know, Chicago has some great restaurants and I
True.
am going to try to eat at all of them apparently. So I need to keep walking so that
Mhm.
those two things will balance out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially the
I've
north
had,
side. My gosh. The north
I
side has
know.
so many good restaurants.
Yes. And I walk by so many, I drive by so many. I'm like, how will I ever get to all of these? It's crazy. I've had more phone conversations in the last several months. Like I just never had time to just talk with friends on the phone. Our friend John, you know John,
Yeah.
he's one, he just likes to pick up the phone and chat. You know, he's not a
Yeah.
real texter. We talked last night for like a half hour. He wanted to hear how the reunion had gone. So I have time for that. I'm like, okay, that's cool, you know. And I've picked up a couple little um I, I guess volunteer things. I'm gonna be, well, I am coordinating the contest that the INBA does, the Crystal Mikes. H. Wayne Wilson has done that since we started it. And he has been trying desperately to retire for a while now and really needs to continue to do that. So I'm taking over that, you know, administering that, and that's fine. I have the time. And then I'm working with an organization called World Chicago. I don't know if you're familiar with it. So they're here in the city and I think they're more than 70 years old, but they basically, when the US government has a program that they want to do. So, for instance, I was involved in one in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia. They have been an independent country for, I think, 32 years now. And one of the challenges with a new country and a new democracy is the piece that journalism plays in that. And they're in the shadow of the Soviet Union, Russia. It's crazy. So they have struggled to build up journalism. So the US State Department says, let us help you. We have an idea. And I think they put the idea out for bids and proposals and so forth. So this World Chicago will look at what the idea is and say, oh, we'll build you a program. Why don't we have 15 of your Georgian journalists chosen, selected? They get to come to the US for 2 weeks. They'll be in Chicago for a week, and then they'll go down to this little town called Normal for their other week where they have some good journalism, and they'll go to classes and they'll do tours and they'll do cultural things. And so it's been called the Media Education Program, and this World Chicago has administered it. So I was very blessed to be asked to speak to them when they came to Normal. And then we really hit it off. And then I was invited to be the other part of the program where we went to Georgia and did kind of a traveling show of teaching. So I have taught students in Georgia and educators in Georgia. And I love Georgia. I have some Georgian wine over here
Wow.
because they invented wine. But anyway, World Chicago is here. The executive director of World Chicago, who I met through all this, I can walk to her house. And so she got in touch with me. She's like, "You're here. Do you want to help us?" So I've
Wow.
already helped. They had a Korean group that they were doing something similar for. I arranged a tour of WGN, which they enjoyed, so that because they were learning about American media. And now I'm on a planning committee. There we have a fundraising luncheon coming up in about a month. So I'm helping out with that, you know. Maybe I'll get another travel opportunity. Don't mind that, right? But so, you know, I have time to do that. And it's just a different thing. And I know how to plan some events. And, you know, if you need me to help you get the speaker or something, I can do that. So it's nice to do these other things with my brain. I do my work at work and then I come home and I can do other things.
Wow. Yeah. And what's Georgia like?
Oh my God. I didn't even know where it was on a map. I was really ignorant about it. And when I first met them in Normal, a lady from the Georgian embassy came up to me after, said, "Thank you for the presentation." And she said, "Would you like to consider coming to visit Georgia?" I'm like, "Oh, that would be great. Sure." Because literally, I was the first one that presented that week. I'm like, they're going to forget about me by day 4. They're going to see other people they like better. That was just a pleasant fake invitation. Well, like 3 months later, she's like, "Okay, so we're ready and we'd like you to come to Georgia." I'm like, crap, where's
Wow.
Georgia? What do they speak there? What do they do there? I knew nothing about their media, nothing. I was so ignorant. Um, it is, it's a very old country, beautiful history, beautiful culture, such a culture of hospitality. They consider guests a blessing and they do everything to make you feel welcome. They roll out a banquet of food. I mean, it's like a movie in a lot of ways. And it's also a country where there are the haves and the have-nots, and you see the poverty and you see the lack of opportunity. I met people who were, we would always have interpreters around to help with the language things. And one of the interpreters, one day we were talking, and she was talking about her other job. I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" She's like, "Well, I'm a pulmonologist." And I'm like a doctor? She's like, "Yeah. Doctors have to have second jobs to survive there. Isn't that insane?" And we just had a lot of really good conversations about the economy and then the things that, again, Russia and with the Ukraine situation, which hadn't even really flared up when I was there, but was kind of brewing. They look at that and they say, well, if that goes the way Putin wants to, maybe he comes to us next and tries to retake us again. And their beautiful architecture could be destroyed in a week, and their beautiful art. It's just a warm, wonderful country. It's very easy. They, again, have this hospitality mindset. The vast majority of them speak English, and they will try anything to please you and help you try their beautiful cuisine and to help you have a good time and appreciate their country. They're wonderful people.
Wait, so why
So,
do they speak so much English?
because I think of the tourism, and they are forward thinking, and I think it's part of the, we've got to get away from what we used to be and the old school, and they see that that's their future. A lot of them, they're very interested and they want to know. And um, some of the educators that I worked with were sending kids to the U.S. for school and to other European countries.
Now, did anybody ever ask you to try to get them over here, to help them get them
To,
over
I'm
here?
sorry,
Did
to
anybody ask you to try to help them get them over here?
No, no, I think they have ways. I think they have figured out there are several programs. There's a good relationship with the US government. The US government really looks out for them. So I think there are a lot of pathways that they can use.
Hmm. And then so you're doing that and you're working at WGN and then you're volunteering for that. And what was the other thing you were doing? Oh yeah, the crystal mics. I
Well,
want to
the
ask you about
INBA,
that.
yeah,
Okay, so the crystal mics, do you have any first of all, when is the deadline for the crystal mics? Has it opened up yet?
it has not opened up yet. So I was literally just thinking, I need to get that cheat sheet out again and see what my next date is. I just finished, and because you helped with this, several of our members judged categories for the Iowa Broadcast News Association. So we do it reciprocally. Yeah. We help them out. They will help us out when it's our turn. So that was the first part of it, to get that done. Just got that done about 2 weeks ago. So now I have to move into our part. But I thought before this convention this weekend, I better know, when are we going to open? What are the categories? Because we are using a new judging platform this year for the first time, maybe for the second time. No, I think it's for the first time, because we used Rock Our Awards
Right.
for the first 3 years. And shout out, really good platform. Very happy with the service on that. But for some reason, the decision was made to go to a different platform. So I think it is new for us this year. Yeah. I'm new in this role, but I'll get it figured out.
Well, any advice? Because it's sort of cool that out of staters judge Illinois because
Hmm.
they have no background about any of these people to sway them in
Right.
one way. Just like we
Well,
didn't have a background of of Iowa.
okay, but what I thought about, um so the Quad Cities, that's Illinois, and I
Oh yeah.
know some people there, and I'm like, I really shouldn't have them judge Iowa because they probably do have some background there,
Oh
right? And
yeah.
then a couple people I was going to ask, I was like, oh, her first job was in Cedar Rapids. I probably shouldn't ask her, So because of the
Okay.
business being the way it is, there's sometimes are ties. I've never worked in Iowa. You've never worked in Iowa,
No.
but some people have, so you kind of need to look out for that a little bit, I think.
Yeah, because I have no idea about the Iowa situation. I just purely went on what I heard. So I thought
Yeah.
I heard some really good submissions. So when is Iowa going to be announced? The winners.
I think their convention is this weekend, the same as
Okay.
ours. So I
Okay.
don't know if that means that they've announced them already. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll check that out. I'll check with the guy and I'll look at their website because I am interested, yeah, to see maybe if the ones because I judged a couple categories too, and it'd be neat to see if some of my what I thought were they winners in other categories? Because I feel like that would be some verification too, like the
Yeah.
work must have been good.
That's true because yeah, I heard some good stuff, so I'd like to see if those people won. And then I judged another contest a while ago and it was somewhere else. And there's one that really shone and they didn't win anything. I thought, yikes. So I don't know who else was
Oh,
judging. Yeah. But okay,
hmm.
so do you have any advice for crystal mics for people to win? Because I know there's a lot more competition in TV downstate, right?
Yeah. Um, you have to enter, but don't be afraid to enter because you and I both know sometimes that we think that everybody else is doing it, and then we're
That's
looking at
true.
a category with three entries. And it's like, my gosh, you number four, you could have blown those away, and you
Mhm.
might get in a category with 25 entries, but generally the categories are a little smaller and a little more spread out. So I would highly encourage you don't have to have a certain number of years of experience. Um, I think you should try to make sure it's something that's pretty clean. So, in TV, we kind of always play this game of, well, I wrote it well, I tracked it well, but that day I was working with somebody who edited it who it was kind of bad.
Mm,
Eh, if you have another option, you probably should. It probably should
right.
be as close to the complete package as you can get, or write in the judge's notes and explain that. My work is the writing and the tracking. My work is the investigative work. I did not edit. And not that you're shaming anybody else, but just to be clear, that would help us focus. Because that
Yeah.
with TV, there's always so many parts. We always kind of wonder, well, what did you do?
Oh, because I was gonna say that because for Iowa, some people wrote a lot of stuff, and for me, the
Mhm.
bottom line is, what am I listening to? Because there's certain
I would
see for
agree.
radio, it's more you really have to be effective with sound and so forth, and you have to tell the story. You can't really quote unquote cheat with images.
No, but what if it was written really well, but you're like, oh, but it wasn't edited that well. But that person didn't edit and it was writing category. You know,
Okay.
you're still going to hear the editing and it's going to affect you. I totally get that. But still, say, I would try in my own defense to be like, but I wasn't, because of our system, I did not edit it. So please focus on the writing. I don't know. Why
But
not try?
also for the writing, you have to also submit a script. So usually you
In
can do
most
that.
cases, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But again, did you what did you do? Did you write that script yourself?
I see.
Did it get looked at and tweaked by 7 people? I don't know. I don't
Okay.
think teams have 7 people to tweak things anymore, but
Oh, and by the way, you mentioned John Suntress, and he is a
shout
podcasting
out, John.
pioneer. Yeah, he said two
Mhm.
of my favorite radio people, but you didn't really work in radio that long, right?
No, John and I worked together at the college radio station
Okay.
at ISU, WZND, because I came in with that little high school small town experience.
Right.
I auditioned and got to be a DJ right away because I knew how to run a board. I mean, most kids go to college, they don't know how to run an audio board, but I did because of my small town upbringing. And John went to a very good high school up here with a good
Yes.
radio program. So he's another one who got right in. So we've been friends ever since. I worked at WRMS radio in Beardstown and then WJIL radio in Jacksonville. And then there have been radio stations connected to most of my TV stations. WMBD had WMBD AM and KZ93. I did tiny things. Maybe I'd do a voicer or something. And WISN had WISN AM down the hall also. I don't think I'd ever did anything with them. And GN has GN radio. You know, we're not even in the same building, in the same part of
Right.
town. I'll never do anything there. So, but yeah,
Well,
little bit of radio.
well, also you guys are union and GN isn't. So
Oh, didn't know that. Okay.
I don't know if that's a rule, but now but with radio, how come you chose TV over radio as a
Um,
career?
Kind of because of the way the program was built at ISU, it was kind of a natural transition. And there are courses at ISU that are tied to the TV program. And you take those more like your sophomore and junior year. You can take the radio courses, at least I could earlier. So I kind of had those done and I was moving forward. And it was like, oh, now, and I like radio is the voice and the writing and the performance. Then, when you're comfortable with that, decent at that, then you can add the visuals, which is a whole other thing. So I think that makes sense. And I just continued and then I stayed there.
So I always ask people this in these interviews. What advice do you have for people? And of course, you were a professor before, so you gave tons of advice over the years.
You got to show up. You really do. Be on time, be ready to work. I feel like this advice I could have been given day one 35 years ago, but it's true. And especially since the pandemic, we've, seen, yeah. Um, Try not to be afraid.
Wait, what do you mean? But
And
what about the pandemic? What do you mean?
the fact that people, I think, got away from showing up. And sometimes you didn't have to physically show up, but then it became, are you still checking into your workspace at 9 a.m.? And I think, I've read some things too about how some of that has really dropped off and people have found ways around working from home and making their keyboard do something when they're not even
Oh
really,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, right. So, and it, even in the classes, it was just like, I can't teach you anything if you're not here, and maybe you don't think you look great today, and maybe you're not feeling it 100%. But if you even come and give 80%, I can give you something, and then we'll get you somewhere. You'll be further along. And just every day you could learn something, every hour you could learn something. That sounds like Pollyanna, but it's just true. There's
It's
no
true.
substitute for being there.
Yeah.
And even if that's virtually being there, I'm showing up to this today because this matters. So, um, but we really, really, really need people who at least care about this business. You don't have to be a crusader who's like, I'm going to topple the authority figures with my journalism. If you just think, I want to meet some interesting people and tell their stories, that's great. And just believe that that is needed and wanted and that you can find a place to do that. And even if you can't find that from the get-go, that you can create that work like we talked about. Why do you not just record things on your phone, start your blog, do
Yeah.
podcasting,
Yeah.
do live streaming? You and John are such great examples of that, having conversations and making that work for you. I know John is writing a book right now, which is super exciting because he's continuing to learn and to expand where he's going with things. Just try. I just There's nothing worse than somebody who just doesn't try, because I don't know what to do with that. Give me something. We can get somewhere.
Well, sort of like, in entertainment, I mean, I've read so many books and I've seen so many documentaries about entertainers, and the ones who make it are the ones that show up and do the best they can and work on their craft, even if they're feeling horrible or even if they're high or whatever,
Yep.
they persevere.
Did you just say even if they're high?
Well, of course, various entertainers have had some issues, so.
I do, but that cracks me up. Okay.
But, I had a student who admitted to me that he showed up often high to my class, but whatever, he did a pretty good job, so. But
Yeah.
anyway, I was going to say also, okay, there's a flip side because you mentioned the pandemic. I'm just going to bring this out there or put this out there. There was also the Great Resignation. I was actually part of it. I wrote a blog post about it, so it's not private information. But I found that during the pandemic, some of us, and we know who we are. Okay, shout out to the people I worked with. You know who you are. We did show up. Didn't call in sick. We did all these things, and people were working at home, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were paid a lot more money. Or,
Mm-hmm.
some of us would try to contact these people, and hopefully people are listening to what I'm saying. They're probably nodding their heads, and they wouldn't respond because I don't know where they were. They were earning a full salary with benefits. Some of them were union. And then the company, it's not just where I was working, but there are some companies that would reward some of these people, or some of these people were maybe they were union people and they knew what the rules were and they worked to the edge of they worked to the minimum requirements and they got their raises, etc. And then the pandemic was over, and the people who, unless they were under contract, but certain people were rewarded and certain people weren't, and that's why some people left. Some people totally left the business too because they were out there reporting during the riots and so forth. I mean, there are just various things that went on.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And
sometimes it's not, yeah. Sometimes people do get away with not showing up.
oh gosh, yes. Yeah.
So,
And I don't have a good answer for that because I've never, I've had some workplace situations that haven't been great, but I've never had anything to that degree. And it's always where I felt like I could make myself heard. And it's got to be a terrible thing to not feel that you're being heard and that you don't have a voice and that you don't have any power. That
yeah, because
sucks.
some people were literally telling management that we needed help, like mental health. And people didn't do anything. And that's why and there were articles written too about the situation, and that's why some people left. So sometimes it works that if you have a good work ethic, it pays off. And sometimes you just see people getting
Mhm.
away with things. That's a reality because I've noticed that in the
No,
media.
you're right. You're exactly right. That's a sad truth.
Or sometimes people have a contract and
Mhm.
maybe their situation changed, but they have like a year left of their contract. So they make a lot of money and they barely have to do anything or nothing at all. They don't even have to live in Illinois. They don't have to show up physically. And then meanwhile, the other people do have to show up and they're showing up at 4 a.m. and so forth, and they're doing a lot of work. So there's that other side. I mean, I think that people should know the full situation. And I think that's one of the reasons why people become disillusioned and they quit because they
Yeah,
see, like, wait a second, I'm doing all this work, I'm not paid much. And this other person is barely doing anything. I'm doing all the work for them,
right.
and they're the ones that are getting the accolades.
Yeah,
So
not
I
fair.
don't know if you
Not
ever,
fair at all.
but did you ever hear
Do
that from students once they got into the business?
really no, but I no.
Oh,
Their
somebody
problems
said,
are more, a little more predictable, more, I'm having trouble stretching my money, or, I really miss my family. That's honestly the number one thing that I hear from people. I have a young woman right now, she is in her second job, and she's in Washington, DC. I'm so proud of her. She started in Georgia. She was there for a year-ish, and now she's in Washington, DC, which is great, great leap. She misses her family in Chicago really badly, and I'm going to do what I can. Maybe she'll be in our control room at WGN
oh
before
yeah.
too long. And there's kind of not a lot you can do for that. You talk about, well, hey, let's make sure you're getting involved in an activity there. Are you going to maybe a church there, or maybe a trivia night, or, whatever it is that you like. And, have they come out to visit you? But that's hard. And that's the number one thing, those personal things. And that continued to kind of blow up after the pandemic because people stayed at home and stayed in the nest even more. Getting people out of the nest has been my biggest problem or issue over time. A lot of families send their kids to ISU from the suburbs, and they believe they're sending them for 4 years and then they'll get them back.
Oh,
I mean, I didn't look at college that way. After college, I knew I would go off in my own direction. But a lot of these families expect they're going to come back. And I'm like, well, I just talked to one at the reunion this weekend. She's going to graduate. And she's like, well, so, I know it's not likely that I'll start this career in Chicago. I'm like, it's not even not likely. It's not going to happen, because she definitely wants TV. I said, look, you could possibly be on the assignment desk, but that's not what she wants. And she's still going to be out of her depth. You want to start on the assignment desk in Chicago? Yikes.
well,
That's
also
insane
I
to
mean,
me.
also the people, if this person's not from the city, a lot of the news, first of all, they have to look at what's being covered in Chicago. A lot of crime. You know that,
Mhm.
WGN, because I
I
worked
do
there.
know.
I would show up early, and a lot of the stories are crime. And you have
Hmm.
to know the city. You
Hmm.
have to know what areas, you have to know the drama of different areas. You have to know what the issues are. And some people I've met live in the suburbs. They grew up in the suburbs, and they think they should work immediately at a top station in Chicago, but they don't know.
They don't know
They
Chicago,
drive
do
in.
they? No.
No, they don't know the nuances and so forth. Actually, by the way, Jasmine said preach it. I guess that when I was talking about the people working at home and quote unquote, I always say quote unquote working at home while the other people
Jasmine
had to show
Crichton
up.
is an awesome human being, isn't she?
Yeah, who now where does she work?
She is at Bowling Green State University, and
Oh,
she
cool.
and a nice young man just came to visit Chicago a couple weekends ago, so we got to reconnect. But a top-notch educator. Her students are very lucky to have her.
And she teaches journalism.
Yes, and all the control room stuff too. She knows
Nice.
top to bottom. Very
Nice.
innovative too. They did some eclipse special coverage.
That's cool.
That's
Yeah,
genius.
I think isn't Bowling Green also known for their pop culture research?
Sure, I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay.
But that sounds great. I don't know.
So okay, so you got students in the past who wanted to be in Chicago. Did they say why they wanted to go straight to Chicago?
It's what they grew up watching. It's what they knew. Mom and dad loved the 9 at 9 on WGN. And so, and that's mom and dad's and grandma and grandpa's perception of TV. You're going to come and sit next to Robin and Larry. You could do traffic like Brett does. And maybe they could, but not right out of school. And then I say, okay, here's how the stations work. So New York's number one, LA's number two, Chicago's number three. That means everything under Chicago is fair game. Everybody's trying to get up here to Chicago. Why are they going to take you out of college over somebody who's worked 2 years, 4 years, 6 years?
Mhm.
It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And by the
So
way,
leave it alone.
Jasmine did say we have a lot of pop culture experts. That's what I thought.
Okay. Yay.
At Bowling Green,
Thank you,
that's what I thought.
Jasmine. Jasmine, shouldn't you be teaching something right now? I don't know.
No, she's watching us. So, so any other advice other than what you said? Because I sort of countered your advice with some other, because I was in it for
Mhm.
so long. So,
No, and very fair. And again, I am a very privileged person. I am a white woman, obviously, of a certain age. I have some talents, and I think I have parlayed those talents in a smart way. Thank goodness. But I've had a lot of right place at the right time moments in my life,
hmm.
and if you don't get those, that I'm probably not as helpful, honestly. Um, Advice.
Oh, by the way, Jasmine, as you're thinking, Jasmine said, you said, doesn't she have teaching to do? And she said, no.
Oh, okay. It's all done. They've all been
Right.
taught. That's good. That's good. Um,
Well, also, like I said,
I,
I like to say though, you have a very pleasant personality because I've had students too where I've said to them, part of it is how well you get along with others.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and maybe that's the small town girl in me, right? Right? I mean, I can be different people, that's for sure. But I don't know what other advice. I wish the money was better. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be all about the market size. People get kind of hung up on that in the TV world. And again, I tell them, here's market three. It's like, well, if I can start in 85 instead of 105, I'm that much closer. Yeah, you are. But maybe 105 has a better, like if you have a three station market like Rockford is, I think
mhm,
it's 135 ish. But there are three stations there that are out every day, that are competitive. I
mhm.
think that's better for you than maybe Champaign, which only has two stations and where it's honestly not as competitive. WCIA really dominates there. The Quad Cities have three stations that are competitive. They're award winning, so there are all these factors. And then the ownership, do you want to be with Nexstar? Some people have strong feelings against Nexstar. Sinclair, a lot of people have strong feelings about that. But I know some really good people who work at some Sinclair stations. So you got to learn about the business. You can hear that I can spout this stuff. Um, and you've got to learn about the business, but you've also got to learn about journalism, and you've got to learn about getting along with people, and you've got to learn about living on a budget. It's a lot when you're a young person. Be gentle with yourself, but show up every day. I come back to the show up every day, because nothing can move forward if you're not at least bringing something every day.
That's because, especially in newsrooms, people don't have a lot of tolerance for people who are clueless or who are dropping the ball because there's a
No,
lot at stake.
no. I will say though, WGN is the nicest newsroom. I had no
It's the gold
idea.
standard. Yeah.
People say please and thank you all the time. Sometimes I'm too abrupt for people. I can tell. I'll go to a
You?
producer and I just like want to ask my question about the VOSOT, and they'll be like, wait, how are you today?
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
I gotta write this thing in 15 minutes here. Just answer my, and I'm not mean, but I'm to the point. So it's very nice. I have not heard an outburst in the 9, 10 months I've been there. Not a single one. And a lot of our people have worked at one or more Chicago stations previously, and they tell their stories about the outbursts they have seen in other stations and the maybe crazy bosses or whatever. And so I'm like, wow, again, I'm a lucky person because this is a nice newsroom with decent people. And we do a lot of work,
Yeah.
but we're nice about it.
Yeah, so the good thing about WGN is, first of all, I love the content. The morning show is incredible. And they hired you, which means they're not against older people. They're not, they don't discriminate. They don't age
I am
discriminate
not.
there.
So in my writer pod, several people. Okay, I got to give a shout out. So I work with this guy, Jerry Howard. He just celebrated 40 years with us. He's a Southern Illinois University graduate, and I know he worked somewhere else first. So, he's in the 60s. He's got to be. But when he went to work at WGN, he worked for Paul Davis as his
Wow.
news director.
Wow.
And anybody with the INBA remembers Paul, certainly a character and somebody who passed away a few years ago. And we have named one of our awards for him. We have the Paul Davis Newscast Award because he was all about that. So I just love that every day I am in that newsroom with somebody who Paul hired, who worked with Paul, and again, and they respect that. And there is a real diversity of age, gender, race in our newsroom, and I really, really like that.
That's good. Yeah. Can you, that's another thing is people think that, yeah, talk about diversity. I just did an excellent interview with Reginald Hardwick about diversity. Why do you think that's important?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it always has been, but just, and I live in a very progressive neighborhood. I'm near Andersonville, so um, certainly we have LGBTQ um, represented very strongly here. Um, it just you can't tell, you can't report on the world if you're not experiencing the world. I guess I would say. I really like what we put on the air. I like what you see on our air. I like that I hear Spanish frequently in our newsroom. One of the writers, her mother is from Cuba, and several of the other writers are fluent in Spanish. Um, you have to represent the community where you are. We don't have a very strong Asian component, and we should. And I guess you never get it perfectly, right? I don't know. I don't know about the hiring at WGN, but you, what I learned from teaching, you could feel a certain way about people because they look a certain way or come from a certain place or whatever it is, or because they're Cub fans, even whatever it is. When you know somebody and you know them as a person and you find things to like about them, and then you find out they're a Cubs fan, it's like, okay, well, Cubs fans aren't that bad, right? Because this is my friend now, or this is somebody I at least respect now. And so, that translates to whatever it is. I'm again blessed to have worked in a university community where you do get fresh ideas and fresh people, and some not so fresh, and then you have to kind of bridge the gap between all of that and say, no, that's not how we're going to say that. Let's talk about what that might mean and why we might use this language instead. And yeah, it's just diversity. It just shouldn't even be something that we have to think about. It should just be how we are.
And
How are
I
you
just want to
in
mention there, yeah, there are a couple other things too. You did mention small markets. I just want to let people know that when you're in a small market, you get many more opportunities to do lots of different things. And
Mhm.
and you probably know this now, when you're in a bigger market, you're put in a slot. It's very hard to cross over to other things. You can't, like, for instance, I know that there's some people who have a certain beat on TV who are reporters,
Mhm.
and they would love to do some other kind of beat, but they're in that certain beat slot and it's hard to switch over. Or there's certain people who are writers in a certain category, but it's hard to become a writer for some other category or to
Yeah,
become a producer as well.
right. We're as writers, we're very general. I mean, the range of what I will write today, I don't even know, but it's going to be insane. I giggle at it sometimes because I first thing I do is I go through all the running orders and I just start to make bins because I have to edit too of all the stories I'm going to do. And again, I'll be like, here's the hippo from Cincinnati. Here's the latest from the Middle East. Here's the 14-year-old killed outside high school. Here's a court thing that I've got to look through the paperwork on. Here's that Dalton mayor causing trouble again. Oh my gosh. That's such a great, amazing show to watch. But so I could be a producer because of my past experience. I will never be on the air at WGN. I don't have any expectation of that. I will never pick up a camera there. Um, I don't want to work on the assignment desk again. That's scary to me. That's too much to keep track of. So yeah, you have to do that in that small market, but it's great because
Mm,
what if you really liked something but you didn't know until you tried it,
mm.
or you didn't know you were really good at it until you tried it? Small markets let you do that. You'll make your best friends, your lifelong friends in your small markets. Wonderful people at WGN, but we rarely go out after work. I get off at 10:30, and Kelly on the assignment desk, she lives in Elmhurst, so she and I are not going for a drink at 10:30. That doesn't work, and Andrew, oh my gosh, I don't even know where he lives. He drives at least an hour. He's not going to have a beer with me in Roscoe Village, which I could do, but so yeah, small market friends. But, I spent this weekend with some of my small market friends who are still my friends, and we were telling our stories. I'll see people at INBA who were small market friends.
Okay. And what do you so you edit audio, you edit video as well as a writer?
Yes, I was a little surprised by that, but I love it. Yeah, we edit on Premiere, but I think it's great because, a lot of the stories have multiple elements. And so if I'm writing that story about the Middle East and I want to talk about the latest bombing, I will make sure that I lay the shots of the latest bombing first, then the soundbite with the State Department, and then maybe the video of the aid trucks go after it, and I write about that there. So I like that it all fits. That's how TV should work, right?
So do you work on first the writing or the video first?
It depends. Mm, I try to make sure I what video I have because I will definitely write differently. I will, thank goodness, I will never write the story free of the video. I just can't.
Mhm.
Kills me if I don't have something to support it. You can put it on camera if they'll let you, and I'll go to a producer and say, I know you wanted the VO to start at the top, but I really need 2 sentences on camera. And they're great. They'll change anything you want. Again, so accommodating. But I also take that as a sign of respect, you know. And I don't know what they know about my background, but they seem to respect all of us that we know, and we'll take care of this for you and we only want to make it better. So
So then, so you might, so it just depends. Sounds like it's a creative job.
it is. Yeah. And I definitely look at it that way. I'm with people who've been there 8 years, 10 years, and, sometimes, oh, I got to write this again. I'm not to that point yet. It still feels very fresh and new to me. I'm like, well, let me think of a cute little way to say this, or, you know, yeah, I like it all. And
That's
and I
good.
do see creativity, but also I just have to slam together, if it's 10 till 10 and we just got video back from a scene or from Captured News, one of the services that we use, and we just got the information from the mins and, and I'm going to write 3 sentences. There's no creativity there. There's boom, boom, boom. It's done.
And does somebody check your work to make sure it's
Yeah.
journalistically?
So the producers see it, and then we have a supervising producer or executive producer at all times of day. And I even work a weekend day and it happens there too. And I love that. I mean, that's what a big market should be, right?
Mhm.
That you
Yeah.
have some layers so that the product is that much better.
Okay, so anything else? Because we barely talked. No, I'm joking. Anything else you want to share?
Come to the INBA convention, but I think it's too late to register, honestly. Shout out to INBA and again, the friendships, you and I have a friendship now. I need to get you over here because it was a very lovely party that you had, the Leap Day
Oh yeah, my
party.
party. Yeah, where we
Yeah, it
don't
was
take
very,
pictures. Yeah, because you said I'm gonna take pictures. I'm like, what? You took one picture, but it wasn't of the people. Yeah, because see, I guess when you're at I'm at a certain age where it's like I don't need to take pictures of the fun I'm having to prove that I'm having a good time. You know? Because I notice that with people, they'll go to some event and then they'll take a picture. I'm thinking, are you taking the picture to prove that you were here so you can boast about it on social media? No boasting necessary, you know?
okay. I will say the counter to that, my dear mother, may she rest in peace, needed a picture of every cake
Oh,
we ever
nice.
had at any party, right?
Yeah.
There was no social media. This was just, so this might be in me a little bit because I think I took a picture of food or the little display kind of thing or something,
Display.
right?
Yeah.
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 So I think that's where that comes from, Margaret.
Oh yeah,
I'm
I
going to
did
blame
meet
my
some.
mom.
Yeah, I volunteer at the Holocaust Museum, and there's a woman I volunteer with, and she literally takes pictures of every treat that she makes for her family, and
There
she's
you
got it
go.
all on her phone. That's cute. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go
And
with
then
that.
so
It's
why?
cute.
And the bottom line is, why should people join the INBA? I re-signed, so I'm a member again, and I'm on the board currently. But why should people join it?
The friendship's number one, but the support. And it's a tough business. It's a weird business. It attracts quirky people like us. And maybe you don't even realize, I was, when my kids were growing up and I would go to soccer games with my kids and, I would be talking with the moms on the side of the field and talk about, oh, did you see that, the county board's going to do this? They had no clue. they weren't living in my world. So it's really nice to be with people who just get it. And I have had so many awesome conversations with newsroom people since I've been here, people who are in all the newsrooms around town. And for me, the best ones are with the producers because we just talk newsroom stuff over and over again. I'm thinking about Jeff Burnett, Jeff.
Oh my gosh,
You
I love
know,
that guy. Jeff
Jeff and
Burnett is
I
the one who
just,
got me. Yeah, Jeff Burnett, he's in Indianapolis right now. He's the one
mhm,
that got me to join the INBA.
yep. And he loves the business. He knows all these trivial, crazy facts about the business,
Yeah.
about the markets and everything. So it's just these kind of people. And if maybe you don't even know, and maybe they're not the people in your newsroom really, but you'll find those kind of people at IMBA because we're all slightly nerdy, weird, quirky, but really good hearted and mission driven. Yes.
Yeah, one thing that happened at the INBA one time when I was at a convention is I was talking to a news director and I said, "Oh my gosh, I would love to do some reporting. I mean, not to like not in order to be on camera, but I just realized that I really love reporting." And the person said, "Well, let me know. Maybe you can do." And I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty cool because
Yeah.
yeah. So you just never know. But that's at the convention. But what if people don't go to the convention? What's the reason to join?
Well, your money, which is insanely cheap, I think we
It's
charge
cheap, very cheap, very cheap.
$35 annual membership.
Yeah, it's nothing.
You're still showing support. And then you're going to get news because we do a monthly newsletter. Shout out Jason Pisha,
He does a
with
great
just
job.
tax tips. Our president, Rachel Lippman, is doing an excellent job of coordinating things and working on some other professional development things. We give scholarships, so you are in a part of that supporting the scholarships. I believe you get a slightly better rate when you enter awards. As the new awards person, I really should know that. So
Yeah.
I got a little homework to do on that. But yeah, for what you pay, you're just part of something a little bigger. You can avail yourself of our legal counsel, Don Cragen, who is on retainer for us at all times. So maybe you're covering a meeting in a small town. Maybe you're covering a meeting in Dalton, Indiana. No, it's Dalton, Illinois,
Right.
and they won't let you in the meeting. And you're like, this is against the law here, and I'm the media, So you've got somebody that you can call, or you can call another member and get advice. So yeah, lots of reasons.
Okay. So so nothing else you want to say.
Well, my voice is dying because of my
Okay.
whatever cough is going on here. But I don't know. I'm good. I didn't look at the clock for a while, and now I'm like, oh. And again, I'm trying not to swear. All
Right.
my years in broadcasting, I knew not to swear. Now I swear. So I'm trying to be very careful and keep it
And
clean
also when
here.
you're a writer at WGN-TV, you're not near a mic, so it's fine.
Yeah, Nexstar has a no swearing policy, though. I
Oh,
was
that's
told
true. I
about
forgot
that on my
about that.
first day. Some of my coworkers have mentioned it as they swear. So yeah.
That's true. They have a no swearing a policy that's in their agreement. Yeah. And they have some
Mhm.
other things that people didn't read, but okay. Well, again, it's great that they do not age discriminate at Nexstar. I know I keep saying that, but it's very refreshing and it's good that you're doing so much. And oh, also about Chicago. Is Chicago a shooting gallery, as
Oh
people
God,
elsewhere
no.
think?
No, no. I mean, literally somebody could fire shots outside my sweet little brownstone right now. Somebody could be mad at somebody who lives in my sweet little brownstone and come in and start shooting. Somebody could shoot me on the way to work today. I know that. That's life. But I am loving this city. I am loving the walkability of it. I try not to get hung up about how much I pay for a cheeseburger, or for a beer, but I love it, and that I can walk to friends or take an Uber to friends. It's a great city, and I really didn't even do much last summer. When I drove home yesterday on Lakeshore Drive, took me quite a while, but the entire city was at the lakefront yesterday, in case you didn't know. But it was great to see. It was just like, oh, that feeling of, wow. spring, summer's on the way. Get outside. It's a great city. I am enjoying it immensely, and I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I try to be smart, have a purse, I stick an extra credit card in my pocket and a $20 bill in case somebody takes my purse. So I'll have something. If they take my phone, I'm screwed. I'm really screwed because we all know how all the apps are on your phone. But don't be afraid. Come up here. It's amazing. Come
Yeah, and I
visit
always
me.
tell people that, yeah, because people think Chicago's this cesspool of problems, but I'll tell people, look, I'm outside every day. Nobody's walking around looking paranoid. They're actually laughing, enjoying themselves. The kids are skipping. And yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad you
I
confirmed
have
that because you're
families
not.
all around me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different than people might think.
Okay. So I'm stopping.